So this is our research paper from my colleague, Mrs. Magdalini and I. The topic is factors influencing the creation of dignity culture in young teachers. The main aim of this paper is to explore on the culture of dignity in preparing new teachers and the factors that influence this model. The culture of dignity in Albanian school has received special attention from the perspective of teacher ethics. This is reflected in documents and instructions of the Ministry of Education over the years, such as the Teachers' Code of Ethics in Public and Private Pre-University Education, which are MES 2011-2013, and by its institutions, IZHA 2019. The language which teachers employ may either reinforce dignity in the, in the workplace or not, and that the language of dignity transcends the inspirational language which at times needed, based on Latemore 2017. Henry Adams, in his book, The Education of Henry Adams, underlines, teachers affect eternity. They never know where their influence ends. Respect for human dignity is a fundamental universal right that underlies the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, 1976. The study aimed to discover these factors. This study intends to describe the factors that influence the construction of a culture of dignity. The factors influencing dignity are said to be dynamically subjective, but the creation of a culture of dignity in young teachers can be externally affected by their education, conditions, etc. The study found that traditional models, such as teacher and school model, are the most essential factors that have influenced the construction of individual and new teachers. Tradition and the influence of communism. The Albanian society comes from a totalitarian regime, like some other Eastern European countries. Throughout the 20th century, many European countries had authoritarian governments, and many were occupied by what we refer today as rogue nations, where individuals were stripped of their dignity through proclamation of class enemies and appropriation of private property. According to Hebel, 1979, edited in 2018, ideology offered human beings the illusion of dignity. The post-totalitarian system touches people at every step, but it does so with its ideological gloves on. This qualitative study was conducted in Korca, Albania during 2021-2022 and used an inductive content analysis as the most appropriate way in finding and describing factors that can influence or compromise the culture of dignity in young teachers in Albanian school environment. Based on the nature of this topic and the theoretical insufficiency in recognizing the influential factors on the culture of dignity in Albanian schools, the study used conventional content analysis, one of the three approaches of content analysis. Participants in this study were 15 students of the second year in professional master programs, teachers in secondary education, 9 females and 6 males, equally divided in 3 profiles: teachers in social sciences, teachers in biology and chemistry, and teachers in mathematics, physics, and informatics. Participants were deliberately selected and trained on dignity model according to Donna Hicks 2018 during 7 weekly sessions before their professional practice. The model of Donna Hicks, the model of dignity consists on 10 elements: acceptance, recognition, acknowledgement, inclusion, safety, fairness, independence, understanding, benefit of the doubt, and accountability. This is the table where are represented the 15 students with their codes as participants. There is, in the second column, is presented their gender, so female and male, their age on the third column, which the lowest one is 22 and the highest one is 30 years old. Then it's the high school of the participants, city or village, the master professional program, social sciences, mathematics, physics and informatics, and biology and chemistry. Then it's who or what motivated them to choose the teaching profession, and the answers, as you may see, are parents, passion, friends, family, or even their desire. And then in the last column, it is schools, so where they perform their professional practice, which is high school in the city or in the village, and it may be a public or private high school. Data collection. The data were collected by using individual, in-depth, semi-structured interviews. Students were asked to describe their experience in 4 out of 8 weeks of active teaching by respecting the culture of dignity, the model according to which they were trained for 7 weeks. Their interview took 2 weeks during June 2021 in the presence of both authors of this study. The interviews were based on these questions. Do you consider the culture of dignity applicable? How did it change you personally and professionally? Which elements of the dignity model were easier to implement and more difficult? How do you judge students today? And what is your attitude towards the class where you taught? This study used inductive, conventional content analysis for data analysis. The researchers were fully engaged in in-depth interviews of participants and listened carefully to the responses, but also kept notes, which is a common protocol, by alternating the interview time up to 60 minutes. The first phase of coding process, open coding, was carried out independently by researchers judging the importance of the most objective identification of important concepts. The other 2 coding phases were realized by researchers working together. Here is the table of the coding process, which consists in 3 columns about subcategories, generic categories, and main category. The subcategories, cultural background of the new teacher and the professional profile, are included in the generic category, which is personal. The second one, which is the teacher's competence, a generic category, includes professional satisfaction, scientific competence, and professional competence. And the third generic category, communication behavior, includes communication style, assessment, control, punishment, prejudice, which are included in the main category, which is the traditional model of the teacher and school influence, the application of dignity culture in this institution. Results according to the generic categories. In the personal category, during the interview, participants underlined that the cultural background of teachers and students are important factors in the implementation of dignity culture, in understanding the dignity itself and its protection mechanisms when violated. The student 11B, 30 years old, says that before the training, for me, the teacher's dignity was the teacher as a scientific authority over the students. During this experience, this was mixed with a more humane perspective. Student 1A, SS, 27 years old, said, I think there is a contradiction between the model of dignity and the traditional model of behavior in classroom. I do not remember high school teachers ever saying sorry when they were scientifically wrong. I did this, I apologized, and students were surprised by saying one after the other in a hurry, nothing, no problem. I felt like a child. I do not know if I'm going to apologize again in front of the class if I make a mistake again. In the professional competence, teacher competence was identified by the majority of students interviewed as one of the influential factors in implementing culture of dignity in teaching. Based on their attitudes, scientific competence, professional competence, and professional commitment, which is satisfaction and choice of profession, were selected as subcategories, categories that influence themselves in creating this climate of dignity. And in communication and behavior, referring to participants' attitude and opinions, this category was the most influential and directly affect the implementation of the model. What is also noticed in the answers of authoritative or formal style interviews, in the verbal and non-verbal communication, some very traditional elements such as prejudice for students, discipline or punishment, and control on student choices are influential factors towards the acquisition of the dignity model by new teachers and making it a culture of dignity. Based on the results of the study, we are listing several factors that directly affect the application of dignity culture, personal teacher competence, and traditional models. In the first steps of the study, the aim was to build awareness about dignity. Human dignity is the fact that a being has of its very nature a determined objective position within the manifoldness and heterogeneity of being, which demands respect and protection, as well as realization both in its relations to others and itself, according to Runner Carl. The training was held before the professional practice, and that made students aware of their dignity and that of the others, and professional practice helps students understand the implementation of dignity model. In respect to the study, it should be noted that the inherited model of the teacher prevails in the style that young teachers manifest in class. The direct impact of the teacher's competence on respect to dignity is evident. Scientific competence makes them more confident and evaluates interactive communication, encourages them to research and how to research, makes clear assessment rules, ways of control by respecting their dignity. According to OECD report, a major reform of the curriculum since 2014 has changed the expectations, and they are most based on student-centered approaches to support learning in their classroom. However, many teachers in Albania continue to use a traditional teacher-centered approach to teaching. Communication and behavior are directly related to the traditional patterns. The favorite teacher or the traditional teacher model in our society remains in the young teacher mind. Studies have shown that even as the Albanian education system is implementing many reforms, the professional development of teachers still remains a problem. As conclusions, we have found some topics in this study. Several factors were brought to light. They affect the implementation of this culture by young teachers in the Albanian school environment, such as personal characteristics, teacher competence and style, inherited patterns of communication and behavior. The findings of the study brought to attention in the same line with previous studies the importance of a culture of dignity in various organizations and institutions, and in particular those of education. This is because it promotes the personal and social well-being of the individual that directly affect the success of the organization and the society progress. It is evident that teachers are accompanied by anxiety and stress towards student results, and adding the traditional elements of a post-totalitarian society, the violation of dignity remains a concern for educational institutions. Students involved in this study were faced with experience of implementing the dignity model with traditional elements, and the study resulted in describing some communication and behavior elements that prevented the implementation of this model. Discipline as an old concept and punishment as part of it should require reconceptualization based on the preservation of dignity, because in any case it will not work. Referring to the study results, the high scientific and professional preparation of the teachers should be considered and promoted by the faculties of education, as well as by suggesting on-the-job trainings, continuous qualification, etc. The school infrastructure is very important because it indirectly conveys the respect that the state and society pays to teachers and students as an irreplaceable institution of generations' education. Promoting a culture of dignity to school leaders so that they themselves can be confident in its impact on the staff work when they feel equally important to the institution. This is part of the concept secret curriculum, which educates students and young teachers as intentional content of education. So thank you for your attention.